Video.
We are live, guys.
Oh my goodness. We are live.
Yay.
Karibu Nairobi.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear. Should we start now or
Yeah.
we should start now?
Yes, definitely.
Ah, okay. Let's take a minute. Everyone, let's breathe. If you're watching, if you're listening, if you're doing whatever you're doing, let's all breathe. It's a chilled afternoon. Yeah, okay. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to say good afternoon, Nairobi, but I want to consider the fact that other people could be watching. Yeah. Yeah, so welcome to OSCA Nairobi. This is our first event, Introduction to Open Source. And yeah, my name is Tabitha Kabu. I'm a co-lead at OSCA Nairobi. And I'm here with the amazing brother, my co-lead also, and our speakers for today. Yeah, a little bit about OSCA Nairobi. We are an open source community in Nairobi. We just recently started. We are meant to focus on open source, introduce you to open source, and get you to know more about open source. And we plan on doing this by engaging you in events like this event we're doing today, and also, coming up with projects that we can contribute to as a community, all part of open source, and even let you know about, things that are going on in the open source community and share resources as well. So yeah, we'll keep interacting with you guys along the way. So stay tuned for updates from OSCA Nairobi. But first, we'll start with our event for today because it's only necessary that we know what open source is. Because maybe you've heard about open source, you don't really know what open source is, you're not sure what it is or how you can contribute. Yeah, so I think it's only wise that we start with this event. And yeah, at this point, I'll welcome Velda. She'll, introduce herself and then she'll introduce our speakers for today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, hi, my name is Velda. I'm also the co-lead of OSCA Nairobi. So, our event today is Introduction to Open Source, where you get to understand the ways where you can contribute to open source and why open source is important. And the good thing about this specific event is that we have speakers who are actually in Nairobi and people you can reach out to help out in their projects or actually learn more about open source even after this session. And yes, today we have Maya Edwin and Wayne Gakuo. So I think they'll introduce themselves further. So welcome Maya and welcome Wayne.
Hi guys, my name is Maye. I'm the good-looking guy in the photo there, at the bottom right. Yeah, I'm happy to be part of this amazing virtual event, and I'll just I don't know if my screen is being shared. My slides, Tabby. Awesome, great. Yeah, there you go. So my name is Maye. I'm a software engineer based in Nairobi, and really into open source. The creator of PWFire. Most of you guys have heard if you're into progressive web apps or really active in the web community. And a new open source project that's coming along that's called the Read Blog. So if you Googled Read Blog PWFire, you'll see it. Just show a preview. So this is PWFire, the library, and this is the Read blog. So PWFire, the library, is basically all the new capabilities, web APIs, integrated into one single API. So if you wanted to add these new modern web capabilities, some of which were announced during the famous Google I/O, adding to home screen, just ways to build better and better capable progressive web apps, then this is the library to go to. So we have a lot of features or API bundled into one on the library, and that's my open source work. Yeah, I'll be talking more about it later. And we have the Read blog. So this is our most recent project to allow people who are into anything web to write articles or just guidance or technical documentations on GitHub, and they can access the web app on GitHub and contribute their technical documentations. They can host it wherever they want to host on their independent domains if they want to reuse the same project, or just contribute content to our main site, which is at bray.pwf.org. This is also just an effort of us to just kind of increase our base in open source as a PWF project. Yeah, before I continue, I have an amazing co-presenter, that is Wayne, who is also a friend. I think he can introduce himself now before we go deeper. Yep.
Yeah. Hi guys. Wayne Gakuo. I'm a front-end developer at Kobiro. And yeah, what I usually say is I'm always a front-end engineer, and the whole idea of being a front-end engineer is about learning. So I'm one who's like constantly learning on how to build amazing apps and all that just using Angular. And I'm a huge fan of open source. I've learned a lot through open source, and yeah, I hope today that you also get to learn like some of the benefits that you get in being involved in open source communities or even just open source projects. So yeah, back to you, Mai.
Yes, thanks, Wayne. Wayne is an amazing friend of mine. We've worked with him some previously on some projects, some which we did not successfully launch as open source, specifically linked to pwfi.org. But basically, we've had an opportunity to work together on PWFI some time ago. So back to today's topic, which is intro to open source. So open source, I know everyone basically has a vague idea of if it's a new term to you or what that means. Basically, open source in software development, it's the idea of sharing stuff and knowledge. In this case, is sharing software projects or resources to software projects to allow millions of other software developers to build on top of what you as a software developer, engineer, designer, whatever, anything towards software that you provide publicly for people to actually use wherever they are. And we've had amazing platform like GitLab that have super kind of enabled people to actually share stuff and be able to build on top of what other people actually building. And when talking about open source, as software engineers to be specific, it's not really complicated. It's just being able to access a publicly available source code, for example, or technical documentation. So for this case, let me just focus on source code or an actual source code to an actual application. So it starts by looking at this open source or publicly made project, and you can change something like update if it is an open sourced web application. Like for us, you're going to release the read.pwf.org project. If someone would find that the button needs to look in a particular shape, they could just change maybe the padding by 1 pixel, and that is what open source is. So being able to be part of a publicly made code resource that anyone in the world can access and use. So, and it starts from simple things like single commit, and then as you go on, you'll find yourself getting comfortable. You open source one of your project, of which most of software engineers tend to when they're trying to kind of learn about software engineering. So you find yourself just sharing stuff, for example, on GitHub, yeah, and that is open source. So it's just natural that software engineers, everyone as a software engineer has at some point in the development journey kind of shared stuff publicly. Now, that is what open source is. It's intentional and unintentional. So it's just some kind of a DNA in how software engineers or people are building software nowadays. Yeah, and we're going to talk about vaguely or just slightly about how you could actually do that, the benefits, and probably at the end of this short lightning talk, we could take some questions, and along that, as we converse, I and Wayne, we could share some of our experiences and some of the challenges we faced, especially being software engineers who are venturing into open source here in SSA or Sub-Saharan Africa or this part of the world, right? Yeah. So getting back to it, ways to contribute to open source project. So we have documentation. So you go to, for example, Firebase is open source. So you go there. For example, you see that there's a spelling. Instead of being these to show plural and these to show singular, you could edit, and that is your first step to kind of contributing to an open source or publicly available resource that is source code to a particular project like Firebase or whatever. Yeah. So another one is to typo fixes, just translations. You want to translate it into Chinese, into Swahili, into whichever language, you could also do that. I've seen some of these huge projects, people are actively contributing in documentation and trying to translate into their native languages to just increase the base to which people could understand this publicly made software or source code resource. Yeah. And then you could also share your project. Just like I was saying when I was starting out, every developer, every modern software engineer at some point in their journey have intentionally or non-intentionally kind of shared or made publicly a resource that is a source code to one of their projects, a simple app, hello app, and that is what is in our DNA. So being able to share stuff and blah, blah, blah. So your project also is as a direct contribution to sharing software out there for people to use. Another one is bug fixes. This is most common, where people tend to kind of improve existing software, especially those that are being used by millions of projects or millions of other software engineers. For example, the Create React app, the Angular framework, Vue, all those. Yeah. So there's a lot of bug fixes, improvements, suggestions, hot fixes, all those. Those are some of the ways you could actually contribute. You see an issue, if you can provide a way to solve that, you can suggest in the comments. When you look at GitHub and any other repository service providers, they provide a way for you to channel out your comments and allow people to see your suggestion and contribute in that sense, like ideas on how that particular bug on a particular open sourced project that the bug was raised or the hotfix was needed. Yeah. Another one is feature request. You could request that a feature is added, for example, on Angular or Firebase or whatever project, and that is also a way. You don't need actually to build, just suggesting. Yeah. So that means that you are trying to provide an alternative, thinking towards what this project could also provide to you as a developer and other developers based on your experience as you try to tend to build software out there. We have more. Another one is critical one, and that is this is where I want to come very critical to our, let's say, software development community in Africa, for example. Share other people's open source work. That is one critical way to kind of contribute to open source. Yeah. You see, one of the challenges we face as or you would face as an open source software developer in Africa, to be specific, truth be told, is making available your contribution to the larger community. Yeah, if you don't know someone who is in quotes some kind of hero within the dev community, then your product won't reach millions of people. So that is a problem. Yeah. So I think one way you could contribute is if you find a resource that is open sourced code that helps you. It's good. It's good to contribute by sharing or liking the link, forking, for example, and I think that motivates the people behind it. Yeah, you start the project. That's the least you can do, at least if you find it very helpful. And I've seen some guys in our community sponsoring external projects from from other countries. Yeah, you could start from charity begins at home. That small project that is been built. For example, we have this amazing API called Daraja API. Yeah, developed by one of our amazing guy who is also an open source developer, Juma Alan, for example, and others. Yeah, you could sponsor such projects. Yeah, you could also buy them. Just share the project, share it out. You can see thousands of Kenyan software engineers are using that API to build very powerful applications, for example. But when you go to GitHub and you look at that project, uh, it doesn't reflect the number of people actually using it. So the least you can do is like star, and that improves its accessibility, availability to the larger community. So that's the least you can do. But then you find that most of our software engineers in the community tend to associate themselves with external famous projects, which are just like the others here. Yeah. So I think sharing stuff, liking and speaking about them, it's giving shout outs to existing projects locally is also one way you could contribute. Yeah. Yeah. So I just had to mention that. Yeah. So for example, as an open source developer, you can find when you look at PWFI, when I go and look at the stats, for example, when we look at our resources, like for the last 1 year, we had close to 1 million reach, but that one does not reflect on the open source code. Or if you go to the stats and trying to check how many people are actually viewing these projects or cloning, yeah, you find that a lot of people doing that, but then they don't appreciate by, for example, starring, and this happens to many other projects. Yeah, I know we tend naturally to associate with ourselves with some successful things, but then those successful things started from lawyer. So one important thing we could do specifically to our region, now that it is open source Nairobi, is to start contributing to open source by also sharing stuff, liking, and just giving shout out to some of local developers who are trying to share some of their talent by sharing their ways of how they code or their source codes. So I think that is one really critical thing for us to do. And then, yeah, I was just going to mention about PWFI. So personally, I've been engaged with open source for the last 3 years. We started PWFI a long time ago. And how this started was really funny. So when progressive web apps technology came up around 2016, and it caught my attention. Yeah, so most of the time I tended to speak a lot about it, and in every event I would go, I had to show demos of how to actually build a progressive web app. So every time I found myself creating new applications, because if I created this successful PWA, I have to delete and create a new one and start from scratch for each audience I reach. Then I decided, oh, okay, let me just share, create an article that just explains, or a collab that just explains how to actually build one, so that if I go to these events, I just share the link and people can just build on their own. And then after a while, I made one of GDE's Google Developer Expert in Angular, a friend. She's based in Poland. And then we decided to push forward and try to find ways to build more even resourceful tools to allow other developers in the community to build progressive web apps. And that is when PWFI now became very resourceful. So we built it, and then later came up with the API that now is even more powerful, yeah, where we've integrated all APIs that allow people to build great progressive web apps into the API, so that people can actually build quick and stuff. So that is one of my stories, yeah. And through that, I open source. I also learned some important skill, technical writing, because when you open source, you want to allow people to easily know what you're actually doing. So you naturally tend to write about your project. And in the process, you learn more about the project. You become a specialist, in quotes, in that particular project of yours, in the technology you used. For example, if it is JavaScript. And when you become an expert, you share stuff out. And if you want to get more rich, become more official, you build independent technical documentation sites like docs.pwr.org to allow other developers to look at it as a very, very important resource for them to actually be. So that's how open source evolved. So I started with a single commit, just creating a README as a code lab, and then moved to a project that was a sample PWA. And then after that, we moved, and then now it's a very, very quite huge project. So yeah, so that is the reason why we should start exploring options on how you could share your skills, your talent, on how you write code in the open source community. And why open source? Just like I was talking about, you can now share your work, yeah, to the larger community. People can look at what you do, how you do it, and blah blah blah. And then it also help you build standards, because if, for example, you create an open source project in Angular, you will build this project in Angular and talk about how you built it with Angular, and you kind of use Angular standards. Or for example, just a simple thing. For example, we have the licenses you can use the MIT license, so you adapt it within your project. So you now standardize that MIT is a license that could be used to share stuff out. In this case, your open source project or open source code. Yeah. So it also helps us to build and popularize standards. We have enforcing a standard. Yeah. For example, for my case, PWFI is all about progressive web apps. So we are enforcing a ways to natively build web apps with progressive web apps in an easy way. So that is building on top of what these amazing things, Microsoft, Firefox, and other browser vendors actually doing to build powerful browsers that allows us to build powerful web apps. So I'm building on top of that. Yeah, I don't build the entire tech stack behind the browsers, but on top of what the browsers have been able to be built on, I now come up with a way of building something out of it that enforces that standard, but simplifies the way other people can actually use this software on these other softwares. Yeah, so that is it. Another thing is boost your confidence. Yeah, because if you can share stuff and see people are actually using, for our case, I can now see, hey, yes, if I can write content that reaches 100,000 people, or mostly is about 25 to 40,000 a month, people actually visiting this site and looking at these resources, then it builds naturally confidence in yourself, and it's just amazing. Yeah, if you try it out. Another thing is you can contribute to anything. Yeah, so from all those ways I was talking about how you can contribute, so long as the source code is open, then you can actually contribute anything towards it, so long as it makes sense and it is within the guidelines that open source code is built on. Yeah. Another one is day jump. We have improve your collaborative skills. Yes, if you can share stuff publicly, that means you're open to scrutiny. So other people can suggest better way to do that. You could adopt them, you could debate, and that just shows your intention in working with teams, working with others. So it's good also, it improves your people skill as a software engineer. So that is very, very important as a skill. And then indirect feedback or direct feedback. So indirect feedback in the sense of if you see people starting your project on GitHub, for example, or you have a technical documentation like us, and you can see thousands, millions of people actually using it. Remember, it's free. Yeah. So for example, we have a domain, we need to buy a domain every year. So it motivates you to keep purchasing, for example, this domain, so that you can avail these resources to other people to actually use out. So indirect feedback, that is it. And the direct feedback, it's people actually contributing PRs, hot fixes, and bugs, and that just entirely also rolls back to boosting your confidence. So all these benefits are actually correlated. They come after each other. Then you can showcase your talent, how good you are, yeah, in a particular stack. Yeah, for example, I'm sure people within my tiny community, if you asked, hey, I want to learn about PWS, someone will definitely point them to me. Yeah, that I'm confident about that, because I've been able to share the talent I have in building upon the PW technology, and everyone kind of acknowledges that this is the right guy you could ask about PWS, and you will be able to find guidance on how you actually build whatever you want to build on top of PWS or any other project. Yeah. So, and then It also allows you to be part of the global community. And yeah, so for example, we had NASA. They use some kind of open source code, and then whatever, the drone that was working on Mars, I don't know. So it was contributed globally. Yeah, they don't care who contributed, but so long as whatever you contribute makes sense. And yeah, so like that school was open to anyone to contribute. People contributed, and it was something that has led the NASA team to land on Mars using open sourced code. And that is just amazing. We had the thing with the black hole discovery. It was also built upon Python, which is an open source project, and other people built on some libraries, external libraries of people just shared some ways of building stuff, and then the software that was used to find whatever, the black hole or do what, used it indirectly. Yeah. So it's just how amazing it is and fulfilling to be an open source software developer. And then you become part of the global community. Yeah. And then recognition. Yeah. So for example, the ones who contributed to NASA, they were recognized, and that boosts their confidence as software engineers in your workplace, the way you believe in yourself. So it's just amazing. And then we also have some programs like with the GitHub, called GitHub Stars program. It's an amazing program that tries to provide reach to software developers or anyone who is actually contributing open sourced resources. It could be called UX, user interface designs, whatever, just to appreciate them to the global good they are doing to help other developers around the world build software upon or on top of what they have actually shared out there. So recognition, personally and externally, from your colleagues, and some amazing programs like GitHub Stars program. So that is it about open source. It's just an intro about it, a lightning. So, but there's a lot of resources out there. You could always Google, find articles to read about, but then the basic, whether you like it or not, the basic starting point of any software engineer is open source. That's you share your first project on GitHub or GitLab, and whether you know it or you don't know, that is the first step that any software engineer takes place. So what makes more difference is being able to embrace your talent of sharing what you're actually building and allowing other people to build on top of it. And you, as a consumer or another software open source software developer or contributor, it's good for you to appreciate others, lift them up, share their amazing project. If you see it has some things that could be made on it to become better, please feel free to contribute documentation, bug fixes, hot fixes, and that will also showcase how good you are to contribute and improve code bases. And yeah, it's just a very amazing way for any successful software engineers to do what, start their journey. Yeah, I know we have this conversation around where people say that you don't need to share stuff on GitHub to be a guru. It doesn't matter, but at some point, whether you like it or not, you've shared stuff, and that is the open source nature. It's just in the DNA of any software developer. So you have to share stuff, even in the workplace. Open source, it's not all about sharing on GitHub. Even in your workplace, yeah, you have different teams. So maybe you have a user, you have a design system. For example, for those who are building web apps, you can share components internally. So we have web app. Let's like Google, for example. They have Chrome browsers, Chrome pages. They have what else? Google developer sites. They have different sites, google.org. Yeah. Who knows? You can see they look the same. Maybe they are sharing components. Yeah. So people within the company share components like buttons, cards, and you'll see at it. That's internal open source. Yeah. And I think that is it about open source. And one amazing thing I missed also, what are some of the tools to allow you to actually get started in open source? So we have amazing tool that allows you to share code base, your code resources. For example, we have GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, whatever, all those. We have You can just have a blog. That's also one way, a personal blog to share stuff. You can also share stuff on social media. That's how you could share. Another one is we have if you want to reach a well-established community of software engineers or people who actually want to use open source software in their projects, you could use sorry, you could use sorry guys. You could use we have Node.js. You could build stuff on Node.js and share JavaScript libraries or code bases or code libraries on NPM, or we have GitHub packages. So these package manager registries could allow you to do that. We have a lot of them. So, but the famous one is we have NPM, we have GitHub packages. So those are some of the tools you could explore to just provide a way people can professionally use your library for the better good. Yeah, and that is it, guys. We can take any questions, unless if Wayne has something to add.
Yeah. Just before the questions, as you guys are also having time to like pen down your questions, just a brief experience in open source for my case. Of course, started off, like you're being told, like create a GitHub account. You never know that's when you get your next employer and all that. I would say it is actually true that when it comes to recruiters, they're always looking at like what exactly are you doing on GitHub, right? Do you just have commits and nothing to show, or probably just have a GitHub account that's literally there's nothing you're doing, right? But one thing I really came to understand is that however small a project is, right? It can be a to-do app, it can be an alarm clock, it can be a bookkeeping application. Just build it and then push it to GitHub, right? And try and see if you can open source it, and then probably ask your friends or ask your other fellow developers, like, hey, I have built this particular project. You can actually check it out, and if you're interested, I don't know, do a pull request, see what you can change. Giving an example of myself, I really got interested in open source after I got to when I came back to Kenya after I spent like about 4 years in Ashesi back in Ghana. When I came back to Kenya, like got introduced into this tech community that was thriving, and it is still thriving right now here in Kenya. And got to meet the likes of Mai, who are huge advocates of open source software. And that's when I actually started to even work on projects with him, whereby I even got to learn a lot myself, because before all this, I used to be a backend developer. I was using Laravel PHP, but after my first job, I was literally thrown into the deep end, and I was told like I really need to learn Angular, and that would mean me going back to my basics, like what is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that was back in 2019. I remember that time I used to be I used to be a huge critic of CSS, because I was like, what is all this? But after I got into working on projects, and especially with Maya, I got to see how he does his applications, for example, using CSS, how he makes them responsive using media queries. At the same time, also like the JavaScript behind it, because I just like knew the basics. So like, what's a website, right? So yeah, you have this skeletal system, and then you have something that colors up your website and all that. But I really did not understand like how they even work together. So after really going deeper into it and like just trying to see projects people are building out here, and got to really understand, okay, oh, actually, so this is how these things work. And after about a few months, I built my personal portfolio, and I remember building this portfolio in my kitchen, because I had always postponed this idea of I need to have a portfolio, because I was like, I'll just pick a template. But I wanted to say, okay, I'm also seeing some of the projects that Maya had done, like which was like more simplistic type of applications. I was like, let me try and build my own portfolio that's going to be simple, not too much colors here and there, but something that is very simple, that even if you as a person sees it, you can be able to like understand like what this is all about, and even you can change it. So I built my own personal portfolio. That was in the kitchen, like took about 2 days getting done with it. And that was when I actually even got to even understand like how you can use JavaScript to do things like DOM rendering and all that. I don't want to go much into technical details. And after I was done with that, I was able to open source this particular project. And by open sourcing, it's not a big term like, oh, I was talking to this particular person who open sourced it for me. No. It was just a matter of you having the project, making it public, and then adding a license to it, of which I added the MIT license, which meant anyone can use this project for whatever reason that they want, right? So I open sourced it, and I remember when I pushed this particular project to GitHub, I had like these two buttons that were being used to toggle between dark and the light theme, right? And at that particular point in time, I didn't know how to put them into one place, like just one button, of which when someone clicks on they want the dark theme, that icon should just do something like the opposite of dark theme, right? But initially, I had two buttons. The first button was for light theme, the other button was for dark theme. And when I open sourced this project, I can't remember his name, but he's also part of the contributors for that portfolio. He actually did one button which could do everything for me. That is the dark and the light theme. He made the changes. He did a pull request. I checked it out and see if it was working. And when it worked, I just merged it to the main branch. And this is the power of open source, right? You get to learn things that you personally did not know about, and other people may know, and that's how you actually get into it, right? And this project, when I just pushed it, I was like, I'm just pushing it over here. Maybe someone will see it being helpful, and probably, I don't know, they'll want to work on it in their personal time. And as I'm speaking right now, I think it has about over 20 forks and over 20 stars. To me personally, yes, it's not a lot, but for me, it's a huge fit because I never thought that it would actually help people, right, in terms of like really building their own personal portfolios, because it was something like was very simple. You just put in your name, put in your small bio, your experiences, your tech stack. It's just something that is easily interchangeable, and that is the whole idea of open source. You have something that's going to help another person, and what they need to do is just to kind of like take bits and pieces of it, replace them with something probably similar or something they just want to change, and all that. And in no time, you actually become an open source advocate, right? Because it just started with a simple project that you did was just for fun, but it actually helps millions of people out here. So don't ever feel afraid to get started with open source. It can be even as simple as just putting that pet project, we call them pet projects. That's those small pet projects that you have, and just putting them out there and sharing out on your Twitter, for example, saying like, hey guys, I have this particular project, check it out. If you're interested, you can always contribute. And that's how you get into open source. And it's not a big thing that, oh, I need to be someone working, for example, at Google to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually very right. I think I'll share my own experience when Wayne said, oh, you don't have to do like a whole big thing. Like you can start, I love the way Maya mentioned, you can do typo fix. I remember the first time I was contributing to Open, so I think I just went and did, I changed the grammar. I saw, oh my goodness, I was going through the README and I was like, this grammar is not correct. I just thought I changed. And the fact I just did that open pull request, I was really excited. I'm like, oh, this is how people feel. And one thing I really admire about the whole open source community is the fact that you are not discriminated because, oh, you just did a type of fix. I mean, it's nothing. You go to places or you hear a conversation and people are telling you, no, you can actually start with a grammar fix, and that's enough. That counts as an open source contribution, because maybe someone didn't notice it, but you noticed, yeah, and you've actually made an impact. You made a difference to that particular project, or it's an organization. So don't really feel left out. I also remember my first contribution. I think I have so many first contributions because everyone I used to feel like, oh, this is small, this is small. But then I'll meet people and say, oh, please don't downplay your contribution. I so I think previously I've only contributed to project I've seen, but then when I attended Grace Super Celebration, and there's this open source day celebration, and there were projects there, so I was assigned to a particular organization. And I was like, oh my goodness, so what am I going to do? I don't even know the technical stack that these guys have used. I don't really know, and they've assigned me to this particular organization. What am I going to do? But I don't know, with time they'll assign you a task, and I was like, it's not really hard. Like I can actually do this, because the good thing is if you think something is hard, you can actually go and check it out. You can ask someone, how do I get to do this? Then you do it, and then you submit your, they call them pull request, yeah, and you're excited, you made your open source contribution. And I cannot even express how excited I feel, because I'm like, my contribution has really gone a long way in helping this particular organization. And that's the fun thing about open source. You feel happy, you feel a sense of satisfaction that you've helped somebody. Like when Wayne put out his project out there for, or his template, his portfolio for people to use. Yeah, I think it must have given him a feeling of satisfaction. Wayne, am I right, or am I just saying my own thing?
Oh, it's true. It's true. It's really true.
Yeah. So like you feel happy, like you're helping out someone, or someone is benefiting from your open source project. And like Maya had mentioned, it gives you a sense of, I don't know, a confidence. It boosts your confidence to even do more and progress from one point to another. I think I'll ask Velda maybe to share her own story about open source, because I know she's done contributions here and there.
Yeah, so mine was a little bit different. So I started off, first of all, like writing articles, reviewing people's articles, getting into documentation. So actually, at that time when I was doing it, I didn't know if it would qualify as something as contributing to open source. So that was different. I learned that you can also write like as a form of contributing to open source in the Oscar Fest last year. So that was my very first contribution to open source. And then I also got more into open source when I started contributing to various projects. I think there's a project we have worked on with Mae. He's going to talk about it. And actually, wait, yes. So we'll talk about that one later on. But my main contribution, like code wise, was in Hacktoberfest, the one that takes place every year on October. So, oh my goodness, I was terrified. The first one was like, oh my goodness. And then I was getting into data structures and algorithms. So you can imagine you had to come up with like solutions that have not been like there before. So it was nerve wracking at first because I didn't know if they would accept like my solution to the problem. And then the waiting time of figuring out whether it's going to be merged to master or not. Oh my goodness. The whole process was just something else. But they were all merged to master. So I was like, yay! But it's really nice. I feel like contributing to open source is something we should all look forward to and embrace, because you're creating something that people will also use, that's not just you. Yes, I think that covers my experience with open source.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned Hacktoberfest, because I remember I attended also the open source festival, and I really got to hear people talking about open source, how you can contribute, all those talks. And I came
Yeah.
back, had to- every year I'll be afraid of contributing, because I'm like, this thing is
How to
so,
even begin? I feel
yeah,
like one of the hardest things is where to begin. Like, how do you get the proper projects that are suitable for you to contribute to? Yeah.
yeah, that's very true. But I participated last year, and all my pull requests on Mars. I was like, oh,
I
I was so excited, and I got a T-shirt. I was like, a
Yeah.
big thank you, a big thank you to the Oscar Festival, because it gave me the confidence, so like you can actually take this up, because many people have done this thing before. So why would you be
Yeah.
afraid of doing it? Yeah, so that's really amazing. And yeah, like I don't know, someone mentioned that they are really excited that you talked about sharing your product out there and not being afraid of people criticizing you. So at least someone has benefited from this talk. And someone was asking, how can you contribute as a designer? I've shared an article they can read, but if any of you has a way you can answer them, or you can take it out. So my orange. How like from your, I know you guys are software, engineers, you're dev, but maybe to shed light on how do you think designers could also contribute, because it's a big community.
Yeah, just
Okay.
like I was saying, in the tech community, it's basically, it's open source is tied to software, the software kind of industry. So anything that results to software being built. That's why I was talking about documentation. Any resource. That's what I was saying. I was not saying when you share your open source project. I was saying when you share your open source software resource. Yeah. So that could be anything that contributes to building any kind of software. Yeah, could be a white paper and all those things. So there are various ways you could share. For example, for designers, we have tools. Adobe marketplaces, we have different marketplaces, I think, where you could share. We have even these tools that allows you to design, like which tool is famous? Which are some of the famous design tools?
Figma,
Yeah, Figma. They have communities.
Vision, yeah.
Yes, yeah, in Vision, whatever. They have communities where you can share or open source your designs, and people can actually have a look at it and reach out or use it as an inspiration to build their software. Yeah. So some interesting thing about open source is it's rare for anyone to tell you they used your resource. Okay. Yeah, but the most important thing is just to share, and when you share, that is it. Yeah, so you may be surprised that millions of people are actually using your resource and you have no idea. And when you pull it down, that's when you realize that, hey, okay, cool, yeah. So it doesn't matter where you share. So but we have different platforms that you can share specifically for UX designers, like the Figma marketplace. I believe it has one. Adobe, XP, yeah, all those. So we
And
have.
then there's also Dribble.
Yes.
Personally, I go to Dribble to like check on UI inspirations. Like for example,
Yeah.
if I'm building a small website, I just go there for like inspiration. Like people usually showcase their designs over there. So yeah, that's one of the places you can do. There's
That
also
is.
Pinterest. Yeah.
Yeah, that is what I was looking for. Yes, Dribble. So very amazing, huge communities for
Yeah.
visual designers, UX, wherever could actually share their stuff and people could use it. And another way you can directly also contribute to open source, directly to the software, even on GitHub, is icon libraries. We have font awesome, blah, blah, blah. All right. So you can also design a library of icons as a software, as a UX designer. You share it on GitHub and people can build on top of it and use it as a standard. Yeah. So we have many icons libraries that are just built by not software engineers. They are built by UX designers. So what software engineers some do is build on top of it, maybe to come up with SVGs or whatever, or CSS powered icons on top of what you've actually built. Yeah. So one inspiration should be font awesome. Yeah. They've really done well to build open source icons and from a design perspective. So yeah, those are some ways you could share your work as an open source UX designer. So, but I think the most important thing is, since open source is tied to software, so any resource that contributes to any kind of software being built, then that resource is a software resource. And if it is a software resource, that means you can share it publicly. So that becomes an open source resource that is software.
Yeah, and I also think just to add on to that, also if you want, you can always team up with a friend who is a developer. Could be a mobile developer or a web developer, depending on your designs. You can definitely team up with them and build an open source project. And yeah, that's how you actually contributed to open source as a designer. So you don't really have to write code to be part of the open source community. You can. There's a lot. You can design. You can write. You can write code. You can write technical documentation. You can design posters for open source resources. You know, that kind of thing. But one thing I usually know is that designers like play also a huge role when it comes to open source, because there are tons and tons of designs out there that people just showcase for people, say for recruiters and all that. But people also got there, for example, for just web design, web development inspiration. Because, for example, as web developers or front-end developers, we always want to see the visual representation of what the user wants, right? And therefore, what do we do, for example, if you don't have the UI or UX, the UI UX designs? We go to places like Dribble, we check out Figma, or we check out any other place that is available for like free designs for websites. Yeah. But personally, I usually use Dribble, and it's just been amazing because I can just choose either if I want for web, whether if I want for mobile. So, for example, I built an open source project called, it's just a very simple weather application I built using Angular and Tailwind CSS. And the whole design of how I even built it was all thanks to a UI UX design that I found on Dribble. So that is how you can take part, or you can actually be part of the open source community. Yeah.
I think I would also like to add on Wayne's point of how designers can contribute to open source. So there is this, I don't remember if which page it is, but it's on LinkedIn where like designers say like I have this design. Does any developer want to like take it up? And also you don't necessarily need to be friends with the person, but you can also like contribute. There are normally so many people out there who want to build amazing stuff, and they could build it for you if you're a designer and ensure like it reflects the actual design. So yeah.
Thank you so much for doing justice to the particular question. I hope the person has been answered. I think, Velda, we will work on maybe having an event that talks about how designers can contribute to open source, because
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
really that is really important. Wayne and Maya, someone had asked if you could share links to open. Just found one, so I shared it. But if you
Yeah.
guys have links that you can share, so you could just go ahead and share.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I've shared the thing for Dribble. You can also check out Behance, as one of the attendees mentioned. Behance also is a good place also if you want to showcase your work. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if anyone still has questions to ask. We are going to, wait and see if you have questions. But like Maya had mentioned before, one way of contributing to open source is also sharing other people's work. And, say as a community in Nairobi, we could start this by actually, doing a spotlight on people that are doing open source projects, or sharing their projects. So this is something we are going to work on as the OSCA Nairobi team. Yeah,
Yeah.
anything open source, we'll really try our best to share resources or spotlight people that you should know, or even bring those people on board. Yeah, so that they can speak to us and give us insights where needed. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know if Velda, my wait, if they have anything else to say. I'll open the floor for you guys to give
Okay.
your partitions.
Okay. So I have this particular question is for Maya and Wayne. So you guys talked about PWA Fire, and to people who want to also contribute to PWA Fire, how can they help? Do you have like resources that they can fast read through to know how they can contribute to the project?
My
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's open source on GitHub, so you can always create PRs. People have done PRs before, and
Mm-hmm.
we've reviewed, we've discussed and merged. So you can always find it on GitHub. Even if you just do a Google search, PWFI, you'll find it. So one way you could contribute is the documentation. We are building on top of modern web APIs. You can always find a modern web API that is missing on our API and find ways to add it based on how you've done it. So everything is on GitHub. Yeah. So if you create a PR, then we trigger a release from our end, and that would be you helping us build the library for other developers to use. And another way I was talking about is the read project. It's also another way for people who want to contribute content.
Okay.
It's a blog, basically. So if you want to write technical stuff on it, you can write. And yeah, could I share my screen?
Yes.
Um, Let me do this. Stop sharing fast, and then go to. Sorry. um, Share screen. Okay. Chrome tab. Uh-huh. Yeah, so we have, it's not really open source yet, for example. This is another project we're going to add on PWFire. So if anyone wants to kind of contribute content to it or want to reuse the blog to share their, have a technical blog for themselves, they'll be able to do that once everything is up. But then just to get an early understanding of the entire PWA for our project, you can just go to read.pitlandfair.org and you'll see the site in action. So basically, there are many ways you could contribute to the project. Technical documentation, improve the way. Hello.
Yes, we can still hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Improve the way we've done it, and that will be just enough. Yeah. So yeah, but for now, you can start with the library. It's on our GitHub profile.
My someone is asking if they can take part. He loves building APIs, so will they contribute?
Yeah, especially for the read block. So we are going to build a REST API for it, so that we are going to collect a collection of articles. These articles will be README files or Markdown files. So if the project picks up really well, we may end up with thousands of README files. So that means that to scale it, we need to build a REST API to it. So I think once um, we can reach out, so that once the blog is up for grabs for open source, then we can discuss and see ways he can contribute. Of course, it will be open source to building the REST API that is needed to help us solve thousands and thousands of uh, blog articles that might arise when the project is up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be nice if you shared your Twitter handle so that if anyone wants to reach out to you guys, they can reach out to you. I saw that someone wanted who asked Wayne to share about his role at your new place. I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't think it's advisable to do here because maybe you have your own reason. So I think the person could maybe just follow up with you,
Yeah.
and if you're open to share it, you can share it. You know how these things work.
Well, what I do at Kobiro, I'm a front-end developer and mostly working with Angular. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So building on top of whatever the applications Kobiro has. So just rolling out new features almost every single day. So yeah, that's my work.
Oh, it's Kobiro. Why did I think I could
Kobiro,
have?
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's nice. Yeah. Bella, do you have anything?
Uh, the last thing, I think, because I don't know if we have any other questions, but I'd like to say that as OSCA Nairobi team, we have decided to ensure that you guys get access to like various open source projects that are actually being used by us here and mainly also in Africa, and we want to make it accessible and available so that you don't think that contributing to open source is like rocket science. It is not, because some of us, when you are getting to open source, it was something so big, so we want to make it better and available to you. So we have so much planned for you. You'll get to know what we have planned for you in a few weeks. But yes, you should be excited. We're excited too, and we can't wait to like grow this community with you guys. So yeah.
And also just to before we wrap up, so for those who probably would just be interested in like getting started with open source, probably Maya too. I have projects that are open source currently. Like if you just go on my GitHub, you'll see pinned projects. So I have the portfolio over there. I have what the app. For those who are good with Angular, the portfolio is just basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if you think there could be more features you could add to the project, yeah, just definitely go there, fork the project, create a branch out of it, do your changes, and then push, and then pull, just submit a pull request, and then yeah, that's how it actually gets started with the project. If you want to do documentation for that particular portfolio, do it. I'm actually outsourcing that project for you guys if you want to get started with open source.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was sharing some links uh for you to know about what's if the resources we are going to be sharing to you guys, or the thing that are going on. I've shared our meetup group. You will join the meetup group. So in case we have any events, you'll get notified because we'll update it there. And then you can join our Discord. Our Discord is like our official channel. So Discord, OSCA Nairobi, will just sit there when you join. The link will expire after some time. So if you've not joined, you can join now. And then I've also shared a link to our Telegram. That's also part of our community. And also our Twitter page, so you can be following up to see maybe when we tweet resources or share things that are going to be helpful to you, or even do shout outs. So yeah, and if you have any interesting ideas that you think we could do for you guys, you could also reach out to us. We'll be willing to help out. So yeah, that's it. So thank you so much for joining us this Saturday afternoon. It's a weekend. Maybe
Yeah.
you're out there doing things, but you chose to be here, and we really hope that you've learned a lot. And we are going to, be consistent in doing our events, and we are being intentional about being open source with you guys. So thank you so much, and Karibuni Sana.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye, guys.